This is grade 5, module 6, lesson 12, and the objective in this module is to create a rule to generate a number pattern and plot the points, okay? So we've already been doing this for a little while now, so let's take a look at homework problem number 1. It says write a rule for the line that contains the point 0, 1/4, and 2 1/2 and 2 3/4. Okay, so if I'm looking at 0 and 1/4, and I'm just going to start a little data table here over to the side, and I know that x is 0 and y is 1/4, and I'm looking at these two numbers. What's the relationship? Well, I know that 1/4 is 1/4 larger than 0. So if I look at my next point and I have 2 1/2 and 2 3/4, I'm comparing those numbers too, and I want to see what their relationship is. And I notice that 2 3/4 is 1/4 larger than 2 1/2. So I think I have my rule here, and my rule would be x plus 1/4 is equal to y. Okay? So part A says identify 2 more points on this line, then draw it on the grid below. So we're going to do that. We're going to take our little data box here, and we're going to find point B and C, and then we're going to plot our points and draw it here on the graph. Okay, so for point B, I picked 1 to be the x coordinate, so the y coordinate be 1 1/4. For C, I picked 2, so the y coordinate is 2 1/4. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to plot those points, and I'm going to plot the points that they gave us in the first part too. So I'm going to plot 0 and 1/4, 2 1/2, and 2 3/4 as well. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to label my point B here, and my point C, and I'm going to connect them all together. Okay, so this is what my line looks like. Let me label my x and my y here. Okay, so that's what our line looks like for x plus 1/4 equals y. So part B says write a rule for a line that is parallel to line BC and goes through point 1 and 2 1/4. So let me plot that point so I know where it is. Okay, so for writing the rule for a line that's parallel, I know that point 1 and 2 1/4 is right here, and the difference between if my first problem here where point B was, I had 1 and y was 1 1/4. So now I'm making it parallel to that, but I have to hit the point 1 and 2 1/4. So I have what my original rule was, and it was x plus 1/4. And just by looking at my numbers, I know that my new rule is adding a whole number 1. So I can rewrite that as x plus 1 1/4. So I plotted some points already. Let me make sure that's equal to y to see if that would work. And I have 1 right here, which was our original, and 2 1/4. If x is 2 and I'm adding 1 1/4, I would have 3 1/4, which is right there, and 3 and 4 1/4. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to connect those. So it's just asking for the rule, but I'm just going to take it a step further and connect those together and show that line. And when I draw that line in, it's a little easier to see that those two lines are indeed parallel. Okay, so let's look at just the start of number 2. It says, give the rule for the line that contains the points 1, 2 1/2, and 2 1/2, 2 1/2. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let me just erase my information, my data chart. We're going to use the same format that we did for number 1. Okay, and I put that in my chart here, and I look at my x value of 1, and I see that the y is 2 1/2. And, I could do the same thing. I said, well, that's a difference of 1.5. So then I look when x is 2.5, and I notice that y is still 2.5. So the students might have a hard time seeing this rule at first, but hopefully they'll notice that 2.5 here and then 2.5 here is the same. So the rule is actually quite simple. The rule would be y is equal to 2.5. So using that information, they can go ahead and finish the rest of question number 2.